After looking at the image again with fresh eyes, I'm thinking of reducing the contrast on the rocks. So I'll be darkening the light side of the rocks with a slightly more saturated colors. Keep the rhythm going. I actually like listening to music or documentaries while I paint. This is just a personal choice, but I love listening to music with the heavy beat, something with a strong bass, and like the rhythm of the beat in music, you want to maintain the visual rhythm. Rhythm is basically the backbone of your image, so try not to fill the canvas with many different shapes and stories. It just becomes messy. I have seen images where there were like 5 actions going on in one painting. The problem with it is they start to fight for attention and we lose the plot. I'm not going to say that it's impossible to manage 5 things in one, but have that one bold statement and create a hierarchy of importance. So when we look at the image, you still have that instant read of the key story. Basically, keep it simple so others can comprehend easily. So we spoke previously about keeping the rocks in the same family because the use of repetition is actually one useful way of defining rhythm. Again, no perfect rule for rhythm. It is a broad subject, but rocks are objects that works together, and that's what we are utilizing here. If you're painting trees, they are a very useful tool as well in creating rhythm. I know this is a very literal way of explaining rhythm, but it can also exist in motion and gesture and implied lines, things that are less physically visible. So play around with different techniques. If you haven't already, I'll recommend to look at Edgar Payne's book on composition. He's an American landscape painter and an amazing artist. There's also books like Framed Ink by Matteo Mestrio. Sorry, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but it's a really popular book and it's for a reason, so try and get a hold of it if you can. Let's talk about work. I have worked in many companies, mostly in-house, and I have worked in quite a few different industries from engineering, architecture, jewelry, industrial design, automotive, graphics, layout, 3D, games and films, advertising, and illustrations. And some are for real life and some for entertainment purposes, but one thing that's in common in all of the jobs I've worked in is creativity. So far, I find it all similar in terms of process. The only difference is the subject matter and practicality. Industrial design in real life and industrial design in the entertainment industry is different. Now, this is a personal approach to job hunting, and this may only apply to smaller businesses, but one of the tricks or strategies I used to use is to actually find out companies' weaknesses rather than the strength. In general, we are impressed by things we don't do well in, and it can be in a technical field or stylistic field or just even personality or anything that can add value. Try to think of it like from a chef's point of view. Imagine having 5 ingredients that are all savory, salty, and spicy. There is no way that chef can cook anything sweet, even if the customer demands it. But then you come along with this sweet ingredient. That's it, you're in. There's a demand and you have it. You still need the basic skills and knowledge to begin with, but from then onwards, it only takes that little bit of difference to get yourself noticed. It's not so much about whether you have another salty ingredient, it's having a different ingredient that sweet ingredient that counts. From my point of view, being a little unusual in a positive way can make you really jump out. Obviously, there are many reasons for getting hired. This is just one way I've done it so far. And by the way, it can take time for both sides to understand each other, so be patient as well. Now, I'm gradually building this up, and I've added a lot more warmth to the light side of the rocks. There's no dramatic change here anymore. I'm adding some warmth as well on the foliage. Again, just color picking from what I've got. Now this is a slow process, so basically building noise. I'm adding noise to the image. But as you saw earlier on, the overall feel is still the same as the first 30 minutes of the painting. It hasn't changed much. It's really helpful to start big and work your way to small because it becomes less stressful later. In artwork, art directors can make decisions earlier before you commit to finishing it, so less time is wasted. But I do know designers who work from small to big and is very successful with it. It can also depend on the subject matter too, so again, no right or wrong, just choose whatever suits you. Artwork, speed is obviously important, but when you're learning, don't rush it. It's more important that you come up with your own process that suits you, and if you practice that enough, you will become fast with it. I would say it's important to try different tools like 3D, photography, or another painting tools because it does help you in improving the speed. These days, I think ZBrush is becoming very useful. It's actually very easy to use as well. If you haven't tried, I would say go for it and try it. Although it is 3D, you still have to know the foundation. Like, if you don't know the human anatomy, there's no way you can sculpt a 3D model of a human being. And if you don't know how to design shapes, nice shapes, it's not going to work out well even if you're on 3D programs. So please understand that part because a lot of people miss out on this and they try to skip and rely on the tools. You don't want the tools to control you. You should be the one controlling the tools. The danger in relying on tools is that because the tools are constantly changing, you're going to find yourself learning new programs every time, and it's very stressful. What you want to focus on is information and knowledge that can be used in any field. And there are things like, perspective, human anatomy, animal anatomy, color, lighting. All these are something that you can carry across to whatever tools you use. So don't rely too much on what the tools can generate. Rely on yourself and your knowledge. Now we are still working on these rocks, but think about how light is bouncing onto these rocks. Right now we are working on the dark side, the shadow side, but you still want to define the form in the dark area. Now you don't have to do the details, but just at least suggest that there are shapes and forms within the dark area. Now let's move on to the next stage.